In the quiet shadows of a modest workshop, where the air is thick with the scent of burning metal and the hum of relentless concentration, a figure works tirelessly. His hands, scarred yet precise, move with a purpose born out of necessity and a desire that borders on obsession. This is Dr. Samuel Graves, a man whose past whispers of innovation and exile, a scientist driven by the haunting memory of a world suffocating under the weight of its own creation. Once celebrated, now nearly forgotten, he devotes himself to a discovery that could revolutionize everything, that could free humanity from its reliance on fossil fuels, from the choking grip of pollution, and the endless cycle of destruction. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, scan the delicate apparatus that he's assembled from scraps and ingenuity. It's a contraption no one has ever dared to imagine, a water-fueled engine capable of drawing energy from the most abundant resource on Earth. Every component, every wire, is a testament to his relentless pursuit. No detail is left unchecked as he meticulously calibrates his invention. This is no mere machine, but a reflection of his obsession, an embodiment of hope and rebellion against the powers that profit from the world's suffering. As dawn breaks, the first test begins. The workshop fills with a low, almost sacred hum as the engine roars to life. For a moment, silence falls, then an explosion of sound and light, strange, raw, vital. The water is split, not with violence, but with science and patience. The machine runs smoothly, unyielding, an unstoppable force born from pure water, a source of life transformed into a beacon of possibility. Outside, the world remains unaware or perhaps skeptical. News of his breakthrough spreads slowly among the underground circles, whispers of a device that could shift the balance of power. Some see it as salvation, a miracle that could liberate nations from the chains of dependency. Others, the powerful and the corrupt, perceive it as a threat. Unseen hands stir in the shadows, their intentions cloaked and malicious. Mysterious threats begin to surface. A cryptic note slipped under his door, a shadow lurking just beyond the edge of his vision. Warnings that echo of unseen enemies eager to silence him. Yet, Samuel persists. His resolve only deepens as he glimpses the horizon, knowing that what he's created could ignite a revolution, overthrow the old regimes, and usher in a new era of freedom. His mind races with visions of a world where clean energy is accessible to all, where the air is pure again, and the earth can breathe free. But beneath that hope lies an undercurrent of danger, a simmering tension that warns of a coming storm. In these initial moments, as dawn transitions into day, the seeds of conflict are quietly sown. The opposition is gathering, cloaked in bureaucratic indifference or outright hostility. The machinery of corporate interests and political power begins to turn, sensing the threat. Their opposition is not merely about money or control, but about the very future of existence. The invention becomes a symbol of change, of rebellion, of the struggle between light and darkness. As Samuel looks out from his workshop window, watching the sunrise cast long, warm shadows over the city's skyline, he feels a flicker of both hope and foreboding. His vision is clear, yet uncertain, an echo of what could be, or what might be lost. The fight has begun, and in the depths of those shadows, unseen forces are already moving against him. What he doesn't yet realize is how far-reaching the stakes are, how many lives hang in the balance, and how the very winds of change he strives to ignite will carry with them storms darker than he could ever have imagined. For every revolution, every awakening, demands a price. And in this story of innovation and resistance, the line between salvation and destruction is as thin as a whisper, waiting to be shattered. In the flickering glow of early dawn, the city awakens, but beneath its vibrant veneer, an undercurrent of anticipation stirs. News of the breakthrough spreads like wildfire, an innovation promising to reshape the world's relationship with energy, promising a cleaner, more sustainable future. Crowds gather around screens, their eyes wide with hope, as the first public demonstration of the new technology unfolds. A sleek device, humming softly, glows with a primal luminescence, harnessing power from nature itself. An elegant dance of science and substance, promising to end the age of pollution and dependence on finite resources. Governments, captivated by this prospect, swiftly express their interest, eager to embrace the dawn of a new era. Leaders speak of revolutionizing energy grids, cutting emissions, and ushering in economic prosperity grounded in green innovation. The public's excitement is palpable, a collective breath held in anticipation of an almost utopian future. Cameras record every moment of the demonstration, capturing faces lit with awe, hands clenched in disbelief, and hearts pounding with newfound hope. The headlines follow: "A new dawn for humanity, the Green Revolution begins," promising a clean, endless supply of energy that could free millions from the grip of fossil fuels. But as the world celebrates, whispers emerge in the shadows, subtle, hesitant at first, of forces perhaps less optimistic. Rumors swirl of interference, of suppression, of dark entities lurking behind the scenes. Leaks hint at covert operations, attempts to silence the pioneers of this breakthrough, warning that the promise of green energy might come with unseen costs. Some say corporations had long been invested in sustaining the old order, powerful conglomerates that thrived on the status quo, resistant to change that threatened their dominance. They whisper of clandestine agencies, of hush money, of sabotage, all designed to keep the world tethered to the familiar, even at the cost of environmental and human health. These whispers grow louder with each passing day. Scientific journals suddenly black out reports praising the technology's efficacy. Scientists involved in the project are silenced, threatened, or mysteriously disappear. The media, once aflame with excitement, becomes cautious, slow to report breakthroughs, as if under a spell of fear. Rumors of hacking attempts and data corruption circulate, fueling suspicion that powerful forces are attempting to undermine the progress. In the midst of this darkening landscape, the filmmakers follow a young scientist, Dr. Elena Reyes, whose passion and conviction sparked the initial discovery. She walks the fine line between hope and despair, her mind haunted by the growing evidence of resistance and obstruction. She receives anonymous messages warning her to back down, to abandon her pursuit for the sake of her safety. Yet, her resolve intensifies, as if the future of Earth itself depends on her perseverance. The scene shifts to secret meetings in dimly lit back rooms, where industry execs and government officials debate in hushed tones. Some advocate for continued support of the project, sensing its vast potential. Others dismiss it as a threat, willing to sacrifice progress for greed and power. Shadows dance across walls as figures exchange cryptic gestures, an unspoken acknowledgement that the fight is far from over. Meanwhile, the narrative weaves between the glittering promise of innovation and the dark undercurrents working tirelessly to suppress it. The more optimism arises in the public sphere, the deeper the shadows seem to reach, enveloping light with an increasing heaviness. Voices of hope, scientists, activists, ordinary citizens, clamor for transparency, for truth, for the right to choose their future. But they face a wall of silence, a strategy of intimidation, designed to keep the truth hidden. A turning point arrives as a major demonstration, orchestrated by the initial project team, is abruptly cancelled after mysterious threats and sabotage. The technological marvel is sabotaged moments before its debut in the city square, casting doubt and drawing suspicion. Whispers escalate into accusations. Who benefits from this sabotage? How deep does the conspiracy go? Is there a force intent on keeping the world shackled to its old ways, regardless of the environmental devastation it causes? As the chapter closes, Elena stands before a window, gazing out over the city skyline, its shimmering lights faintly flickering, echoing the fragile flicker of hope amidst encroaching darkness. The promise of green energy remains alive, shimmering like a distant star, just beyond reach, yet fiercely real enough to threaten those who prefer the darkness. Shadows lengthen, and the only certainty is that the struggle to bring light into this world, and to reveal the truths hidden behind the curtains, has only just begun. The whispers of interference grow deafening, whispering of forces that will do everything in their power to erase the hope and the truth before it can truly take hold. The room felt thick with silence, yet underneath it, an unspoken tension pulsed like an unseen heartbeat. Shadows flickered across the walls, cast by a single dim lamp that struggled to cut through the darkness. In the corner, the inventor sat hunched over his cluttered workbench, papers strewn about, lines of complex equations and sketches that held the weight of hope and trepidation alike. His eyes, usually filled with a spark of curiosity, were now clouded with a growing sense of dread. Something was shifting, and it wasn't just the quiet hum of his machinery. It was something darker, lurking just beyond the veil of visibility. Suddenly, the room's door creaked open with tentative slowness. A figure appeared in the doorway, shadows cloaking their face, yet their presence was palpably menacing. The visitor was silent for a long moment, then spoke in a quiet, insidious whisper. "People are watching you. The wrong people. You realize that, don't you?" The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The inventor straightened, clutching a wrench as if to defend his fragile sanctuary. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure stepped forward, revealing a brief glimpse of a face obscured beneath the shadow of a brimmed hat. "Let's call it a warning. There are powers that don't want your machine to exist. You've upset them. Unintended consequences, perhaps? Or maybe just the truth you carry. Either way, they're starting to move." Without waiting for a response, the visitor turned and slipped out as silently as they had arrived. The inventor sank back into his chair, trembling, heart pounding like the heavy machinery he toiled over. The words echoed in his mind, "Watching you, moving against you." It sounded like a threat wrapped in a disguise of civility, but beneath the surface lay something far more sinister. Over the coming days, subtle signs began to surface. His access to supplies started to become irregular, components critical for his work mysteriously vanished or were delayed. His phone would ring, silent moments stretching into uncomfortable silence, then cease when answered, only to ring later with no one on the other end. Paperwork he filed disappeared from official channels, replaced by strange, unmarked envelopes filled with cryptic messages warning him to abandon his project or face unseen repercussions. Correspondence from powerful entities, disguised as routine inquiries or demanded meetings, started to arrive. Invitations that felt more like ultimatums. Once, he found a business card slipped beneath his door. No name, no reason, just an address that, when looked up, turned out to be a nondescript warehouse on the edge of the city. With hesitation, he approached it one night, only to find it empty, save for an abandoned chair and a faint smell of smoke in the air. It was clear someone had been there, watching, waiting for him to come. And then there were the clandestine meetings, clipped words exchanged in shadowed back rooms, where figures cloaked in dark suits discussed his research as if it were a commodity or a weapon. The conversation was tense, edged with veiled threats, warning him that his innovations threatened the established order, that the old powers could not afford to see change spilling beyond their control. He learned later that these were not isolated incidents. Rumors whispered through underground channels suggested that influential industrial consortiums, corporate giants, and even political figures had begun to conspire behind closed doors. Their aim was clear: to neutralize this seemingly dangerous inventor before his work could upset their carefully maintained balance of power. But why? What made his invention so threatening? It was merely a machine, yet, to those in shadow, it represented an uncontrollable force capable of undermining their interests, their influence, their entire network of control. And so they moved, tightening the noose. As he pieced together these ominous signals, a deeper, more frightening realization took hold. These threats were merely the surface of something more profound, something that went beyond mere corporate sabotage or political pressure. It was a calculated effort to silence him permanently, to erase the very possibility of his invention becoming a catalyst for genuine change. The warnings he received, both spoken and unspoken, hinted at a new level of danger. This wasn't just about discrediting or disrupting his work, it was about complete silencing. That night, as the city's lights dimmed against the dark sky, he sat alone in his dimly lit workshop, staring at the sketches and half-assembled prototypes. Somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance flickered. They couldn't stop what he believed in. It was a part of him, intertwined with his very existence. Yet at the same time, he understood that the battle ahead wouldn't be easy. They had the machinery of influence, the authority of money and power, and now, perhaps, direct threats to quiet him forever. He wondered, in that silent moment, whether he had already crossed a line, a point of no return. And if so, what was he fighting for? Was it just progress? Or was it something more? A hope for liberation from unseen shackles, a beacon of truth in the shadows? With trembling resolve, he clutched a small device, the heart of his project, that could change everything if it came to fruition. In that fragile balance between hope and fear, the shadows outside grew darker, more oppressive. And somewhere, in the depths of that darkness, a hush of violence stirred, more than threats, more than warnings. The silence itself was an ominous signal that the next move would be silent, deadly, inevitable. The quiet before the storm had begun to break, and the echoes of what they tried to erase whispered in every corner, warning him. The true battle was just beginning. A shadow crept across the world, a silence that was as deafening as any scream. It started subtly, almost innocuously. News outlets vanishing from the airwaves, broadcasts abruptly cut, stories about the invention fading into obscurity as if they'd never existed. The media blackout was swift and strategic, a deliberate shroud drawn over the truth, leaving only whispers and half-formed rumors in its wake. Behind the scenes, the forces of power mobilized with calculated ruthlessness. Law firms appeared out of nowhere, filing claims of patent infringement and intellectual theft that seemed to come from nowhere, yet always from a place of undeniable authority. The inventor, once celebrated in his small workshop filled with secret blueprints and trembling hands, found himself besieged by legal challenges that drained his resources, both financially and emotionally. Every court date became an uphill battle, each ruling stacked against him before he even stepped inside. His personal world began to crumble under the weight of this clandestine war. The loneliness was suffocating. Friends and allies disappeared into the shadows, cowed by threats or enticed away by promises of safety and silence. The inventor's world shrank, his once vibrant life shrinking into the dim confines of his dwelling, where shadows danced against the walls as he pored over documents, trying to claw back some shred of truth. But a darker storm was brewing beneath these conventional tactics of suppression. Rumors spread of intimidation, not just legal but physical, mysterious figures lurking at the edges of his vision, unmarked cars circling his neighborhood at odd hours. Every knock on his door was met with suspicion, every call with a disembodied voice reminding him that silence was safest. He felt the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting, pushing him into submission through fear. Yet, amidst this orchestrated chaos, there lingered a faint ripple of hope, a whisper that perhaps this tempest was not without challenge. But then, in the midst of his desperation, came the incident. A single moment so dark and inexplicable that it threatened to seal away his voice forever. It started with a scream, a terrible, piercing sound that shattered the quiet night, echoing through his mind and piercing his soul. The device, the very invention he believed could change everything, was tampered with, sabotaged, attacked. The destruction was almost poetic in its rage, metal twisted, circuits fried, and the core of his creation reduced to useless debris. The consequences were immediate. The inventor was found unconscious, his workshop in disarray, the hopes smashed along with the remains of his invention. No evidence of who had done this, no clear motive, only the chilling certainty that someone wanted him silenced at any cost. The incident became a menacing warning. His voice, his truth, had been threatened with permanent silence, not just figuratively but quite literally on the brink of being erased. As he lay there, fighting to breathe through the pain, a thought haunted him. Was this the end? Or just the beginning of a darker battle he had yet to fully understand? His mind raced with questions, but one thing was clear. He had to find a way to break this silence, to make his voice heard again, before everything he fought for was obliterated forever. The darkness encroached anew, swallowing all hope and certainty, but in the depths of despair, a flicker of defiance ignited. The silence was relentless, but not unbreakable. Not yet. The city was unusually quiet that day, an oppressive hush that seemed to seep through the cracks in its crumbling facade. The inventor, Dr. Julian Mercer, had vanished without a trace. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole, leaving behind a void filled with trembling whispers and anxious glances. His workshop, once teeming with the hum of mechanical innovation, was eerily silent, papers strewn across the floor, devices left in mid-creation, as if he had simply evaporated in the middle of his work. News of his disappearance spread fast. The city's streets buzzed with frantic activity as search parties scoured every alley, every abandoned building, every secret corner. Helpless faces gazed into the horizon, whispers flickering from voice to voice. Some spoke of kidnapping, others claimed it was an assassination, a calculated move to silence a voice that threatened something much larger. Rumors swirled like dark clouds, shadowy figures emerging from the shadows, unseen hands guiding the events, an unseen conspiracy orchestrating this vanish. The despair was palpable. The city was on edge, caught between fear and suspicion, questioning whether they'd ever find the man who had dared to challenge the unseen forces lurking behind the curtain of their society. As the days passed, the talk grew darker. Questions multiplied. Who would want Mercer dead? Why would someone want his genius erased? An underground network of whispers began to suggest that his disappearance was no accident or mere kidnapping, but the result of a clandestine conspiracy determined to wipe out his work forever. Evidence, slow to surface, hinted at foul play. A torn fragment of a note was found in his workshop, scribbled hurriedly with a message that hinted at danger far beyond what anyone could grasp. "They're watching," it read. "They will do whatever it takes to silence me." Who was they? Who could be so powerful, so insidious, to pull the strings behind the scenes? The authorities claimed they were investigating. Yet, their efforts seemed mechanical, detached, relying on routine procedures that felt inadequate in the face of the pervasive silence that had engulfed Mercer. No witnesses, no ransom notes, no ransom demands. Just the ghostly remnants of a man who had vanished without a trace. As journalists dug deeper, they uncovered troubling clues. Reports of strange vehicles lurking near Mercer's lab, anonymous tips hinting at the involvement of clandestine agencies with shadowy agendas. Some resorted to conspiracy theories, suggesting Mercer's inventions posed a threat to those in power, enough to warrant his disappearance. Others speculated about a personal vendetta, an argument gone too far, an enemy turned lethal. But beneath all these stories, beneath the noise and speculation, a chilling revelation surfaced. New evidence that suggested something more sinister was at play. Black and white photographs emerged, showing figures lurking near Mercer's home in the dead of night. An anonymous source provided recordings of strange conversations, hinting at a coordinated effort to destroy Mercer's work. Evidence pointed to an organized attempt to erase his legacy, an effort to make his groundbreaking inventions and ideas disappear from history forever. Someone, somewhere, was orchestrating a campaign of elimination, fearing that Mercer's innovations could upset the delicate balance of power or expose truths that certain interests wanted buried. The whispers grew into screams of suspicion. Public concern turned into outrage. People demanded answers, calling for accountability from a society that seemed unable, perhaps unwilling, to confront the darkness lurking behind closed doors. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, signs aflame with accusations. Articles appeared online, threading together fragments of evidence into a narrative of conspiracy and clandestine warfare. The city was in chaos, caught between the shadows of those who pulled strings and the desperate hope that Mercer, somehow, was still alive. In the midst of it all, the haunting question persisted. What was Mercer working on that was so dangerous? Why had those behind the scenes mobilized to silence him so thoroughly? As the investigation deepened, so did the realization that his disappearance was just the tip of the iceberg. Behind the curtain, the gears of a grander plan churned silently, erasing a man, his ideas, and potentially, the future they could have shaped. The last piece of the puzzle fell into place when a cryptic message surfaced, a fragment of audio that sent shivers down spines. It was a voice, familiar, yet distorted, speaking urgently about a betrayal, about a conspiracy coldly plotting to undo what Mercer had built. "They think they can erase us," it whispered, "but we will not be forgotten." The phrase echoed through the minds of those who dared to listen, as if it was a promise, a warning that the fight against this unseen force was only beginning. In the silence that followed, the city asked itself a haunting question. Was this disappearance truly an end, or just the beginning of something darker? The conspiracy was deeper than anyone had imagined, woven into the very fabric of their society, threatening to obliterate not just the inventor but the potential for change itself. As shadows lengthened and secrets remained buried, the story of Mercer's disappearance cemented itself as a sinister reminder that some truths are better left unseen. But the echoes of his work, the ideas, the innovations, began to flicker faintly in the darkness, refusing to be erased, whispering of resistance, and of a relentless pursuit to uncover the truth buried beneath the lies. In the shadows of a once thriving world, the air felt heavy with unspoken truths, yet echoes of what once was still insisted on being forgotten. The landscape was stark, a somber testament to dreams deferred and innovations stifled. The vibrant streaks of renewable energy projects that once danced across skylines had faded into memories, buried beneath layers of silence and sanctioned suppression. Solar panels sat unused on rooftops, their surfaces dulled and gathering dust. Wind turbines, once symbols of hope, stood still, their blades frozen in time, silent sentinels to a society that had willingly traded its future for complacency. The world's transition away from clean energy had been abrupt and calculated. Governments and corporations, once champions of green transformation, had twisted into guardians of the status quo, fueled by fossil fuel lobbies and vested interests. As the initiatives declined, a palpable frustration grew beneath the surface of society, quiet at first, then boiling over into open discontent. The air, once filled with the hum of innovation, now only carried the drone of machinery constantly mining, drilling, extracting, reminding all of the reliance on oil and coal that kept the engines of civilization running, or so they claimed. People roamed in a haze of uncertainty, their eyes reflecting the smog-choked skies, the very cover that veiled the depletion of cleaner alternatives. Children grew up without the stories of environmental awakening that had once ignited hope. Instead, they inherited a world where progress was no longer a measure of aspiration, but of restraint. Yet, beneath this repression, whispers of rebellion stirred. Whispers carried by those who dared speak of truths suppressed and secrets hidden, of a clandestine movement fighting silently to unveil the darkness casting a shadow over their future. Among the shadows, a network of whistleblowers emerged, unseen, unheard by the mainstream, yet united by a common purpose. They risked everything, their voices muffled behind layers of fear and confinement, their revelations buried beneath layers of state control. But some spoke in hushed tones, their words like fragile sparks threatening to ignite the night's oppressive silence. One such whisperer was Elias. Once a scientist on the front lines of renewable energy, he had vanished from the public eye after discovering data that proved the suppression was deliberate, an elaborate scheme to keep the world tethered to fossil fuels. His eyes, haunted yet burning with resolve, had seen too much, evidence that the green initiatives were halted not by lack of technology or resources, but by manipulation and greed. Elias's clandestine messages hinted at a hidden resistance operating in the underground, a secret movement committed to exposing the truth. Meanwhile, across bustling cityscapes cloaked in artificial light, others like Amina listened intently, their hearts pounding with either fear or determination. She had always felt the disconnect, the fog that clouded official narratives, the silence after revelations. She knew the lies ran deep, threaded through policies and corporate promises. Her mind was a battleground of outrage and hope, spinning with questions as she secretly distributed encrypted data, trying to connect dots that could topple the false edifices built on suppression. The streets echoed with the distant hum of machinery, designed to hide the scars of environmental damage, to mask the decay beneath the veneer of a society that refused to look. Every step, every glance was an act of defiance. Society had been manipulated into complacency, fed with manufactured stability at the expense of genuine progress. Progress that once promised cleaner skies, healthier soils, and sustainable futures had been replaced by a corrosive dependency on what was familiar, fossil fuels. Despite the environmental toll and the mounting frustration of a population that once dreamed differently. Yet, through the cracks of this manufactured reality, the whispers persisted. Secret meetings in dimly lit basements, digital confidences shared over encrypted channels, each carrying the weight of hope against the crushing force of silence. These voices dared to challenge the narrative, daring to believe that truth could be reinstated, that a different world was still possible. But the whispers knew they were hunted. Eyes watched from the shadows, threats lurking in the absence of direct confrontations. The authorities had cast a thick veil over truth, branding those who dared speak as enemies of the state. Still, the spirit of rebellion persisted, not out of naivety, but out of a desperate need to reclaim what had been stolen. Because without hope, society was nothing but ashes and echoing regrets. As the day turned into night, the world around them seemed to breathe with a quiet, relentless defiance. The suppressed energy, both metaphorical and literal, simmered beneath the surface, waiting for a moment to burst forth. Darkness cloaked the city, but within that darkness, sparks of resistance flickered stubbornly, refusing to be extinguished. The world without innovation was a world lost in its own retreat, a place where potential was sacrificed on the altar of suppression. Yet, the whispers echoed louder with each passing day. They were the faint promise that beneath the layers of lies and enforced silence, the truth would surface one day. That a movement, unseen yet resilient, fought to unravel the stagnation, to ignite the dormant seeds of change buried beneath decades of manipulation. In the quiet corners of this suppressed society, hope persisted, delicate but unbreakable. And as the whispers grew stronger, the hope of rediscovering the true path of progress, unshackled and truthful, kept the embers alive in the dark. Because sometimes, a whisper can be louder than a shout. A secret can be more powerful than a decree. And within that silent resistance, the seeds of renewal were quietly taking root, waiting for the right moment to break through the darkness and usher in a new dawn. In the shadows of a city that never truly slept, beneath layers of concrete and iron, a different kind of heartbeat pulsed, silent, clandestine, defiant. A dimly lit basement, scent of damp and old machinery mingling with the electric hum of hacking equipment, served as the clandestine nucleus of the resistance. Here, in this hidden sanctuary, voices whispered secrets of a forgotten past and sparked the flickering hope for a better future. A fragile hope, born from desperation. The members of this underground movement moved with an urgency born of knowing that discovery meant their doom. Their faces, illuminated only by the glow of screens and flickering monitors, were masks of resolve, each one carrying the weight of an unspoken pledge. This was the sanctuary for those daring enough to defy the suppression, determined to revive the abandoned footsteps of the inventor whose ideas had been buried by the oppressive regime. Tonight, they gathered again, eyes darting across the room as if an unseen predator lurked outside. Amid the murmurs, a figure emerged, one of the lead hackers, their fingers flying over keyboards in a frantic dance. The screen lit up with lines of code, a torrent of information flowing through the digital veins of a system long thought impenetrable. Their mission was clear: infiltrate the suppressed archives, uncover the remnants of the inventor's lost innovations, and bring to light the truths the world had been denied. As they navigated deeper into the digital maze, every keystroke felt like a heartbeat, dangerous and vital. The suppression wasn't just physical, it was digital, a conspiracy woven into every byte of data, every encrypted barrier. But desperation breeds ingenuity. Using a combination of old-world hacking techniques fused with their own dark algorithms, they chipped away at the digital fortress, risking everything for the sliver of truth that could reignite the sparks of rebellion. In another shadowed corner of the underground, a scientist, one of the few still committed to the lost cause, conducted covert experiments. The lab was makeshift, filled with discarded parts and fragile devices, each representing a fleeting hope, proof that the inventor's ideas still existed somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered and restored. Their work was fraught with peril. A misplaced moment, a leak, could betray them all. Yet they pressed forward, fueled by the potential to change everything, to overturn the narrative of denial. And then, the breakthrough. A fragment of data, buried deep within the encrypted vault, flickered to life. It was more than data, it was a discovery, an insight into the inventor's true intentions, a blueprint for a device capable of exposing the oppressive regime's lies and control. The room erupted in hushed shock, faces lit with a mixture of trepidation and exhilaration. They had found the key, the missing piece. What could be the catalyst for the uprising they desperately needed? But with revelation came reckoning. They understood that exposing the truth was fraught with risk, death, disappearance, betrayal lurking at every corner. Their hearts pounded as they debated their next move. To reveal this breakthrough was to risk everything. They knew what the regime was capable of when threatened. The stakes had escalated from mere resistance to a perilous dance with annihilation. In a calculated move, they prepared to leak the discovery to the outside world. It wasn't just about fighting against suppression. This was about awakening the masses, igniting a revolution of consciousness. They memmed the files onto a clandestine network, cloaking their transmissions carefully, knowing the eyes that watched from the regime's digital fortresses. As they set the plan into motion, a sense of unity enveloped the room. It was more than strategy, it was an act of rebellion, a statement that the silence of the past had been broken, not by grand speeches, but by the silent, relentless pursuit of truth. They knew they were vulnerable, that every moment could be their last. Yet the flame of conviction burned brighter than ever, pushing them beyond fear. In the quiet aftermath, as shadows lengthened and alarms threatened to sound, they prepared to face the consequences. If their message reached the world, the regime's hold could fracture. If they failed, they would perish in silence, their efforts erased like the inventor's original visions. But there was no turning back now. Each heartbeat was a pledge to resist, to remember, to fight for the echoes that history tried to silence. And so, in the clandestine darkness, the resistance's pulse grew stronger, driven by the impossible hope that someday, the truth will no longer be hidden, and the echoes of the inventor's forgotten dreams would finally resonate through a awakened world. In the dim glow of early dawn, the world awakens to chaos. News of the leaked evidence spreads like wildfire, images, documents, testimonies that cut through the fog of denial and silence. The digital landscape is ablaze with revelations that threaten to dismantle the finely woven fabric of who we thought we knew. Every headline, every tweet, every whispered rumor feeds the frenzy, turning skepticism into outrage, and outrage into a tidal wave impossible to contain. The truth, once buried beneath layers of deception, emerges now as a blazing beacon, illuminating every corner of society with raw, unfiltered clarity. In a sterile government briefing room, officials scrambled to contain the fallout. Their faces are masks of reassurance, but their eyes betray the storm within. There's no evidence, they claim, their voices strained with a thin veneer of confidence. Yet, even their carefully constructed denials dissolve in the face of mounting protests. The streets swell with millions, people marching en masse, their voices a chorus demanding accountability, justice, truth. Globally, governments tremble as citizens rally en masse, their chants echoing in city squares and digital corridors, forging unity in defiance of the clandestine forces that secretly manipulated the world from behind veiled curtains. Meanwhile, the resistance's underground channels buzz with heightened activity. The leaked documents have become their battle cry, fueling hope, but also igniting dangerous threats. Shadows move through hidden corridors, warning of retaliation, vague hints that an ultimate response is imminent, a force so overwhelming that it could wipe away everything in its path. The atmosphere thickens with tension. Every message, every whispered warning carries weight, promising destruction for those daring to challenge the darkness. As the revelations ripple outward, the narrative shifts from shock to dread. A thunderous warning emerges, cloaked in cryptic language. A message left intentionally ambiguous yet chilling in its implications. An unseen voice warns the resistance that their uprising has awakened something far more formidable. It's a reminder that some truths are dangerous not just because of what they reveal, but because of who they threaten, those in power who will stop at nothing to preserve their shadows. The warning feels like a prelude to chaos, a harbinger of destruction looming just beyond sight. The world teeters on the edge of an abyss, caught between the hope sparked by truth and the fear of annihilation. News outlets blur the lines between fact and speculation, feeding the frenzy with stories of conspiracy and cover-up. Despite attempts at suppression, the spark has ignited a fire that refuses to die out. People are coming together, united by a shared outrage, their voices rising in a tumultuous symphony demanding answers. Their chants echo through the night, resonating with the silent fury of those who feel betrayed, silenced, and betrayed again, all for the sake of a hidden agenda. Meanwhile, in the shadows, the mysterious warnings grow more frequent. Cryptic messages appear in coded messages, suggesting that the retaliation will not be conventional. It's cruel, calculated, designed to instill fear and submission. The resistance begins to understand that their fight is veering into a dangerous territory, an invisible war where the stakes are higher than ever. The very fabric of reality, the essence of truth, hangs precariously in the balance. All the while, a sense of impending doom hangs heavy on the air. The world has fractured into factions, those clinging to the lies, and those fighting to unveil them. The leaking of evidence has ignited a global awakening but also a deadly game of cat and mouse. Every move is watched, every conversation a potential warning. Resistance fighters find themselves hunted, their safe spaces invaded, trust evaporating like mist in the morning sun. The threat of annihilation looms, not just from external forces, but from the core of a corrupt system willing to destroy everything to preserve itself. As night descends, the warning manifests in a predatory silence, broken only by the distant echoes of protests and the hum of digital defiance. The final message, ominous and clear, reverberates in the shadows. We see you. We know what you've uncovered. The retaliation will be swift and ruthless. It's a declaration of war, an assurance that some truths have a cost too high to pay, and that the push for transparency might come at the ultimate price. In this fragile moment, questions swirl, not just about what's true, but about what's next. Will the people's voice be drowned out in a storm of violence? Will the resistance survive the coming storm, or will they be erased, like ashes swept away by the wind? The world stands at a crossroads, trapped between the hope of revelation and the fear of ruination, with the specter of annihilation hanging in the balance. The silence before the storm is deafening, heavy with unspoken fears, as the realization takes hold. Some lies are so potent that they threaten to consume everything if ever they are uncovered. And so, with hearts pounding and minds racing, humanity prepares for what comes next, clutching onto the fragile shards of truth amidst the darkness. A darkness that threatens to swallow all. The revelations have begun, and nothing will ever be the same again. The echoes of what was uncovered will reverberate forever, a haunting reminder of the price paid for the forbidden knowledge, an ominous prelude to the darkness that lurks just beyond the horizon. In the shadowed corridors of history, the silence has grown heavy, an oppressive weight that stifled voices, drown-fed truths, and sealed away the very essence of what was lost. Outside the cracked windows of a forgotten city, the earth is scarred and trembling, not just from the years of neglect but from the relentless pressure of unspoken truths buried beneath layers of deceit. A barren landscape stretches endlessly, cracked and desolate, emblematic of a society that chose suppression over truth. In this landscape, the damage isn't merely visible. The environment bears scars: forests razed beyond recovery, rivers choked with pollution, air thick with the remnants of industries that once grew unchecked. The world's lungs have been suffocated, all because voices that dared to question, to dissent, were silenced. They silenced the warnings about climate change, about the reckless consumption of resources, about the impending environmental crisis looming just over the horizon. Now, the consequences ripple through every corner of the globe: famine, drought, the slow death of ecosystems that once thrived with life. Within the corridors of power, the energy crisis festers silently. The once thriving cities, now shadows of their former selves, flicker with dwindling lights. Power shortages are a daily reminder of the cost of silence. Decisions were made behind closed doors, deals that prioritized profit over sustainability, neglecting the mounting evidence pointing to the inevitable collapse. The hunger for energy, for control, pushed aside the warnings from scientists, environmentalists, ordinary citizens who dared to speak out. Now, the scarcity feeds violence, unrest, and despair. Humans fighting over dwindling resources, each voice silenced to prevent chaos, yet chaos blooms nonetheless. Innovation? It was sacrificed, buried beneath layers of fear and suppression. Inventors and thinkers who dared to explore alternative solutions were silenced or disappeared. Their ideas, too dangerous for the establishment that benefited from the status quo, were erased from records, cast into obscurity. The great minds who could have propelled humanity toward salvation were forced into silence. Records of hope replaced by the cold machinery of control. The stagnation isn't just infrastructure, it's minds, spirits, the very spark of human ingenuity that once drove progress. Left unspoken, the knowledge that might have saved us perished, replaced by complacency and fear. On a more personal level, the sacrifices are etched into the fabric of individual stories. Those who dared to resist, truth-tellers, whistleblowers, activists, paid dearly. Some disappeared, swallowed by the shadows they tried to illuminate. Others endured exile, losing family, careers, everything familiar in their quest to unveil the truth. Their sacrifices were necessary, they believed, to maintain the fragile peace imposed by silence. But each sacrifice leaves a wound, a reminder of the cost of silence, an enduring echo in the hearts of those who refuse to forget. Now, as the final confrontation draws near, the air brims with tension. The last pieces of the puzzle are within reach, evidence buried deep within archives, whispers of resistance awakening in the underground. Yet, the question persists: will the truth finally emerge, or will it be silenced forever, swallowed by the very darkness it seeks to banish? The looming confrontation is a battleground of ideals, the oppressive silence versus the desperate cry of truth. Every effort to conceal, every lie told to protect the powerful, stands in stark contrast to the undeniable reality of the damage wrought by silence. The society built on secrets is crumbling from within, infected by the poison of suppression. The environment continues to decay, innovation halts, and humanity pays the price, a harsh reminder that no amount of silence can undo the damage already done. In this moment, the weight of collective guilt presses down. The echo of what was lost, of what could have been prevented, resounds through every broken corner of the world. The question is, how much longer can silence hold? How much more suffering, destruction, and despair can be endured before the truth finally breaks free? Or will it remain buried forever, cloaked in darkness, a ghost of the past haunting the future? The final confrontation, imminent and inevitable, waits in the shadows. It's the culmination of years of complicity, fear, and denial. Deep down, a flicker of hope persists, that the truth, once free, might heal what has been broken and illuminate a path out of the darkness. Or perhaps, the silence is too ingrained, too powerful, to ever be broken. And in that silence, the echoes of what was tried to be erased will linger, an enduring reminder of the true cost of staying silent. The night was thick and heavy, the shadows dancing with a silent defiance as the resistance gathered for what could be their final stand. Every face was etched with exhaustion, yet burning with a fierce determination that refused to be extinguished. They knew that what they fought for was not just survival, but the very essence of truth, the truth that had been buried under layers of deception, fear, and silence. In that dimly lit room, whispers carried messages of hope and desperation, a fragile echo of their combined hopes for a future reclaimed. Outside, the city pulsed with the quiet hum of machinery, an endless reminder of the oppressive regime's iron grip. The air was thick with anticipation and the faint scent of fatigue, as if the walls themselves could absorb the stories of betrayal and resilience. Amidst the chaos, a call went out, clear and unwavering, demanding transparency, insisting that the lies must be shattered, unveiling the rotten foundation upon which their oppressors built their dominion. The resistance leaders stepped forward, their faces pale but resolute, their voices carrying the weight of their collective despair and defiance. They urged their allies to stand firm, to broadcast the truth beyond these walls, to penetrate the darkness with the light of honesty. They understood that the fight transcended weapons and tactics. It was a battle for the soul of their society, for the right to know, to understand, to rebuild. In this moment, glimpses of hope shimmered through the despair like fragile shards of dawn piercing the night. A clandestine message flickered across hacked screens. Images of buried truths being uncovered, stories long silenced now struggling to surface. These small victories ignited a spark in those who refused to surrender to darkness. Somehow, amidst the chaos, they managed to glimpse the possibility of change, of a future molded by honesty and resilience. Yet, uncertainty hung like a thick fog, blurring the lines between safety and peril. Every victory was met with a new threat, every whisper of hope dampened by the overarching fear of retaliation. Still, they pressed on, holding on to the conviction that their persistence was vital. They understood that the future's course depended on whether the voices demanding truth would finally be amplified enough to shatter the silence imposed upon them for so long. As dawn neared, the resistance prepared to send their final message, a plea for the world to listen, to hear the truths long suppressed. The weight of history pressed heavily on their shoulders, and as they stepped into the light of day, they knew they carried the hopes of many who had suffered in silence for too long. They understood that resilience was their greatest weapon, that standing firm in the face of relentless opposition was their act of rebellion, their declaration of existence against the creeping darkness. The world teetered at a crossroads. The shadows flickered, threatening to swallow the faintest threads of hope, but the resilience of those daring to speak their truths reaffirmed the possibility of dawn. Yet, there was always a lingering question: would their voices be enough? Could the future truly be defined by truth? Or would they be swallowed back into the eternal darkness that had tried so desperately to erase them? The final scene leaves us suspended on the precipice of revelation and oblivion. The resistance's call for transparency echoes into the vast unknown, an open question left hanging in the air. The future rests solely on whether those truths will finally be heard, whether hope will find its voice amidst the chaos, and if resilience can indeed carve out a new dawn from the depths of darkness. The dialogue hung silent, pregnant with possibility, as the sun rose over a horizon still tinged with uncertainty, a reminder that the fight for truth is never truly over, and perhaps, in that resistance, lies the only chance for salvation.